Hello, everybody. I'm Thomas, formerly known as Chef Thomas on Asian Food Channel, but that's a long time ago. And so, yeah, I'm now the German comedian in, I guess, Malaysia. I don't know any other German comedian in Malaysia. And as you can see in the background, I paint and I write. I'm on my second novel now at the moment. In German, sorry about that. Maybe it becomes a success unless they translate into English, I don't know. Don't think so. And yeah, so that's what I do. I do metal sculpting as well. I once wrote and produced an off-Broadway play, which was called A Naked Date, that reminded me a little bit about, sex in Georgetown, because there's no nudity in it. It's just about mind games of people who date, a little bit what Far Abdul is writing about. But that's, well, it's almost 20 years ago now. Yeah, and that's me. I'm Thomas. I'm in Penang since 12 years plus now, and I like it. Oh, my first novel was, well, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, I'd say. It's about a guy in New York City. This was when I was living in New York City, who, by a misunderstanding with his girlfriend, lands in prison and then gets out of prison, and he's trying to kind of rebuild his life. So it's a little bit about, yeah, again, it's about dating in New York City. It's about, the culture there, and about this lonely guy who's trying to find love in all the wrong places, as they say. And he realizes in the end that the world is just a very weird place to be. That's about it. And it was called Achterbahn. It's out of print now. And this means helter skelter. It's like the up and downs in your life as a single man. Oh, definitely. Since I left Germany in the mid-90s, I haven't lived for such a long time in one place. And I made a lot of friends here. That little wine bar helped. But I really enjoy Penang. I still go to the market every second day. And after all these years, all these guys there, they became friends. And this is what attracted me to Penang in the first place, because I was living in Shanghai, which is a huge city, aggressive, fast-paced. And here in Penang, I was so shocked in the beginning. I was going up Upper Penang Road, and I bumped into a person by accident. And that person said, "Oh, excuse me." And I thought, wow, they're really polite here. And then what happened was all these uncalled is maybe the wrong English word, but things of kindness, acts of kindness here from complete strangers. So like my wife was walking down the street with a handbag, and around this area where we live, it was maybe a little bit sketchy in those days, handbag snatching. And this auntie came up to her, and and we were used from New York and from Shanghai and from Dubai that if somebody touches you, you just go a step back because you think, something bad could be happening. But here in Penang, she just said like, "Oh, take your handbag over your head and shoulders because it's not so safe here." And off she went. So yeah, I really fell in love with the people here in Penang, I must say. Maybe in a short bus kind of way. That's an American joke. I don't need to explain this. Am I a funny guy? I don't know. But I like comedy because it makes me laugh. You look at things in a different way. You always try to get the joke out of it, and sometimes when it's really stressful, you see it from the other side, and you rein yourself in. But I'm not one of these comedians that can't shut off. You know, I'm not trying to be funny all the time. I mean, it's almost like a job. I mean, I take it seriously. Like anything I did in life, I emerge into it. And again, unlike in New York, the comedy scene here, people like each other, people help each other. You know, I do a lot of stuff with Garu, the Bangladeshi comedian, and by the way, he doesn't have a problem calling me then I call him Bangladeshi. He has this famous phrase, you know, political correctness, racism is a taboo in most of the world, and here in Penang, it's an icebreaker. And that's the other thing I like in Penang. It's like everybody knows who they are, and they make fun about each other, and nobody takes it the wrong way. And that's a liberty, you know, that I think as a comedian you don't have in very many places. So funny guy on stage, yeah. Well, how much time do you have? Well, to cut it short, while I was living in New York, I stopped my corporate job, and I went more into the arts. And when I learned how to sculpt, the president of the New School Sculptors Alliance was a cook. So and she was outgoing. I became the president, and we had a very good rapport. And so we talked about art and cooking. And then through coincidence, how it happens in life, I got a stage. That's a term for working in a kitchen for free to learn the job. Because I went to cooking school and I realized I'm already too old to go 3 years to cooking school. And then I wanted to learn it on the job. And I was very lucky that I got this with Wiley Dufresne, who was in those days one of the top 5 molecular cooking chefs in the world. And when he heard that I'm going to Shanghai, he got me a job at the best restaurant in Shanghai, which was on 3 on the Bund, which was from the 3-star Michelin chef Jean-Georges von Gerichten. And he is an icon. And I stayed there for 2.5 years, and then took on other jobs, became head chef. And then after I finished my last job running a kitchen for a 1-star Michelin guy in Shanghai, I needed a break. And at that time, we looked for a place to live in Asia, not in mainland China. And we found Penang. And we started to renovate the house. And then the house was basically finished. So I stayed here, and I really fell in love with Penang, and I decided that I won't go back to Shanghai. But I got bored, and so I opened up a wine bar, because in those days, to get a proper glass of wine, you had to go to one of the big hotels or something. People didn't know. So and wine very expensive. So I opened a wine bar without food in the beginning, only tapas. And if all goes wrong, I thought, well, then I have cheap wine to drink. And then a PR company approached me, and they made me bigger. They made the wine bar bigger. I was in a real restaurant. And so one drunken night, the head of the PR company said, like, so what's your aim in life? What do you want to, what's your dream? What do you want to be? And I said, like, I want to be on TV. And he said, funny that. There are 2 companies at the moment. They are producing for Asian Food Channel. Shall I talk to them? And that's how it all began. And then it became one of the highest rating show in Southeast Asia, called Chalk and Cheese. And that was where I learned about acting, basically. God, it's so hard. I remember the first shot that we took, the director took me aside after 2 minutes and he said, like, Thomas, watch this. And I watched me speaking about food, and it was deadly boring, right? Because I didn't realize at that time that when you speak like a normal person on TV, you make too many stops in the talking, and it gets really slow and boring. So I learned to be a clown, basically, with the food. So when you watch it, it feels like normal speed, normal conversation. But when you do it, it's 200 miles an hour. And you have to think because nothing was scripted, and you have to cook. And so out of this stress, and I had this sidekick, she was beautiful and she couldn't cook, and I could cook, and I was not the beautiful guy. And this banter was something that hasn't been done, at least in Southeast Asia before. I don't know anywhere else. And so, yeah. But it took a year until people in Penang actually realized that who is that guy who goes to the market all the time? And then it didn't stop. And yeah, but I'm glad it's over, because people always think being famous is such a good job. It's actually not, because wherever you go, people know you. Even if you go shopping in Hong Kong, they want to have selfies in the department store. So you can't do anything out of the normal anymore. You have to behave in public. And that's not good for me. Yeah, I don't have a single style on purpose, because I don't like to do or be caught doing the same thing all the time. But I really started painting as a professional painter in New York. And if you want to stand out in New York, you have to do something that's never been done. And in art, that is possible, but it's really, really hard. And so what I am doing is different, because normally when you are in a gallery, you look at a painting for like a couple of seconds, you like it, you don't like the painting, and then you go to the next one and look at the next painting. And you always have in galleries this little white piece of paper next to the artwork, and it normally just says the title and the price and the material. And what I am doing is different. I want you to have memories with that piece of art. So I don't describe the piece. I describe a certain situation that happened to you far, or to anybody in their lives, and my famous painting is called Hanging Hell, and it's about the thought process that evokes that when you are a teenager and you are in love with this handsome man or this handsome girl, and she doesn't want to know anything about you and is dissing you, right? And everybody, I think, has a memory like this. So it doesn't matter what style this painting is. You read these 3-4 sentences and it jogs your memory. You can't stop it. It's like, you've been breathing while I was talking, and now I'm saying that you're breathing, and now suddenly you're aware of the breathing for the next 15 seconds or so, and you can't stop it. You breathe, right? And so what happens then, this painting becomes your story. This painting is you. And the thing is, when people buy art, nobody really knows what art is, or what would the neighbor say when it's hanging in your living room. They would say like, what, you spend money for this? Are you crazy? But now if you buy this painting and your neighbor is saying this, you can reply and you can say like, I bought this painting because it reminded me of this that happened to me. And everybody needs a good excuse for fulfilling their dreams or whatever. And that works. That's the same psychology that, well, forget about that. But and that's what I'm doing. So you could say I'm painting memories, and so I can do oil or acrylic, whatever, old masters, or it doesn't matter. It's about the thought process that I start in your brain when you look at the painting and read this little story next to it. Well, I don't know. Comedy, stand-up comedy is an art form that has certain rules and regulations, which I appreciate, like the 1, 2, 3, you know, the misdirections, the body language, how you make your audience feel good about you being on stage, and all these little tricks and everything. That was very interesting to learn. But also as a comedian, like being a chef, it's maybe the last place on this planet where you can be politically incorrect, you know, and there's a difference between sarcasm and irony. So I don't hurt people, hopefully, but I hold the mirror up in a way, I'd like to think. And I don't know whether this makes me different, but I'm not a storyteller like Fluffy. I'm not using puns too often. I'm trying to have a repertoire that starts at A and then goes back to A. You know, I want to take you on a trip with a certain topic. And I have, well, what's interesting here is that my background is completely different than the background of somebody who lived all his life in Malaysia. And that I had to learn from Garu is that, Thomas, this is not funny here. And I said, why? Because we didn't learn it in school. We don't know about this. And so I have to rethink a lot of things. It's like, okay, well, they are 17-year-olds. They don't know who the Beatles are. Can't blame them, you know, but it's like New York. I didn't find Jerry Seinfeld in the beginning very, I found him boring, to be blunt. And then after 3 or 4 years living in New York, then I get this kind of sense of humor, and it's brutally funny suddenly. So I'm not doing stand-up comedy for a very long time already. Oh, that's in a Malaysian grammar. Well, you know, English is not my first language, so sorry. But it's a kind of, it's an adventure to, especially when you have a, how you say, a bouncing board, like other comedians, to see how people tick. And then sometimes maybe my jokes come up completely out from left field, I don't know. And they go like, oh yeah, you know, I am doesn't mean chicken. It can also mean I am, like Will I Am, the guy from the Black Eyed Peas. And then therefore suddenly an Indian dish becomes a joke. So I don't know, I'm just working with life like every comedian does, I think. Oh yeah. And that's the point. You know, I have an alter ego. One of my alter egos in stand-up comedy is Reverend Thomas, where I'm a priest. And I did the same gig, I don't know, you know, several times, where I explain the life of Jesus, okay, in a funny way, as a sermon. And one gig, nobody in the audience laughed for 20 minutes because half of the audience were Malay girls. They don't know anything about the Bible, I guess. And the other one were born-again Christians. And when it comes to Jesus being gay or something else, they don't see the humor. So this is a memorable gig for me. And what I learned from that is not just that your topic has to be, well, I didn't know who the audience was, but also the professionalism that you need to have when nobody's laughing, just to keep on going. And that's hard. But nobody wants to see somebody on stage who says like, okay, it's your fault that you're not laughing. You don't get the jokes, you know. It's never the audience's fault. You have to learn how to adjust to the audience, but it's very hard to do when you're dressed in black like a reverend, and then suddenly you go like, okay, forget about Jesus. Let's talk about, you know, doesn't work. Well, how do I get it? Well, you walk through life, right? And you sometimes you get into situations where you think like, oh, there must be a joke in it, or oh, that's stupid. Like the show tonight, the last thing with the yellow car that really happened. But I think much more important. It's much more important that when you have an idea, write it down, because you will forget about this. Next morning, this is gone and it won't come back. So I'm constantly writing stuff down. 90% you can't use, but then there are the 10%. And then, and this could be any situation. You could be in the supermarket. You could see something on the news. You have a dream. Yeah, that's it, from everywhere. The only thing I try not to do is I don't make jokes about my partner. And if I do sex jokes, you will realize that I will not use the words. They come in your mind up. And I think sex is just too easy for stand-up comedians. It's almost like cheating. A lot of people do it, and I'm trying to stay away from that. Well, my childhood, I remember I was so glad that I couldn't get into kindergarten because it was full. And around the house where we lived, there was construction everywhere. So I'd like to, as a little toddler, work with the construction people and build little brick walls with leftover old paint as cement. My childhood, you know, nothing much out of the ordinary. I went to school. I made Abitur, you know, high school. I did a lot of sports. I played water polo, swimming, on a student exchange with England, which became my second family till today. I learned how to play rugby. So then, as a 15-year-old, I joined a newly made American football team in Germany, in my hometown, because rugby, nobody was playing it. And after 2 years, they put me into the first team. And then I played for them for 11 years. And 9 years of that, I played Premier League, first division in Germany. Almost made it to the national team. University, studied business, studied psychology. And then went into the corporate world for a while, and then got bored of that. And during all that time, I was painting, I was writing stories, I was playing music, had long hair. Wouldn't say I was a hippie, but you know, it was the 80s. Yeah, so nothing really stands out. I mean, you know, parents weren't poor, weren't rich. Did a lot of jobs on the side to be able to buy guitars or something else that I needed. That's it. I'm sorry, there's not much confrontational or out of the normal. Something new, you know, with me, I don't make plans. Things just happen. And when you look back, suddenly you see a logic in it. You know, it was from, I always loved cooking, right? And then there's this person that is the president of the Sculptors Alliance, where I'm learning how to do metal sculptures, and she is a cook. And At the same time, I was teaching boxing because I was a light heavyweight boxer in New York. I did the Golden Gloves, and I promised myself, Golden Gloves is the last thing to do. I want to get out of this sport with my head intact. So I taught boxing, and one of my pupils was friend of the roommate of Wiley Dufresne. And so he said, like, I will get you this job. So everything kind of, you know, not planned comes together. And what happens now maybe is I had a conversation with very good pencil artists from Penang. And we were talking about, the both of us were selected for the Penang State Museum to make pieces of art about the dusky leaf monkeys. And so she is painting in a way that I will never be able to do, almost like photos or like photos, basically, with color pencils. And I thought, like, I can't compete with this, and I don't want to make a piece of art with a monkey on it, like, you know. And she said, like, why don't you try something more like a composition, a little bit more abstract and whatever. And so suddenly I thought, like, well, yeah, there's an idea. Okay. And so then I put metal bars onto asphalt paint in red, and I used silicone under the paint, and made kind of a cartoonish face of a monkey, that, and then you strip the silicone out, and then you have the underlying paint, and it creates this 3D effect. So the whole thing became an installation, and that's the first one that I ever done. Thank you, Sharon. And maybe that's where I'm going. I don't know. I'm curious, but I don't want to push myself. You know, let's see what happens. To be honest, pretty shitty. But I shouldn't grumble. At least I'm sorry, I don't want to step on somebody's toes here. I'm just saying it as it is. At least I'm not living in a high-rise building. I have the pleasure of a house with a garden, nature. Being in lockdown is for me a gift from God, because you can breathe. You can work in the garden. It's good for your brain. So I shouldn't really complain. But what I miss is the social interaction with my friends. We are trying a lot with Zoom calls. We're watching the Olympics with Zoom together. We do pub quiz once a week. We try to hold it together. But you know, it's kind of, I would say, a solitary thing, which really bothers me, because in the afternoons I come over here into my studio and I do my stuff, so that I have something that I can talk to Louise in the evenings. But it's a little bit like the early days in New York, where as a writer, as an artist, you're so immersed in what you're doing that the outside world is happening and you're not happening, because you have a deadline for your novel and all of that, and then you have to learn again on how to communicate with other people. And I think this is going to happen after the pandemic here as well. A lot of people will have problems to change their attitude, their way of life, like touching people again, not fist bumping, but maybe shaking hands, not in the supermarket being afraid of somebody coming around the corner and you step back, and having chill conversations without any, purpose, just life. And it's hard to write stand up. I mean, you get stuff from the internet and all of that, but the mindset There are just not enough situations in life at the moment that could be funny, that could be put into a stand-up routine. And with the art, it's like, I don't know, I have a different project at the moment where I rebuild a small sailing boat, you know, like that small, like a toy kind of thing. That goes in a different direction, keep me busy. I also started since last December to really learn how to play chess. Oh yeah, that's a bad childhood memory. My father teaching me chess as a little kid, because our grandfather was a kind of a chess master. And I got so annoyed with my father telling me as a 6-year-old, like, why did you make this? And why did you do this and that? And so I really, I stopped it and then played with my brother when we were listening to Beatles. And then with this movie on Netflix, you know, the Queen's Gambit, I got back into it. And that's for me a game now. I want to become the best chess player in Malaysia. Surprise. Yeah, no, won't happen. But that's also solitary, right? I play chess like 4 or 5 hours a day. I'm enjoying it because nowadays you can learn from the internet. You know, you have now possibilities that 30 years ago, 20 years ago, you didn't have. So you can get faster. And the understanding of the game is still there from my childhood. But yeah, they told me I'm too old to become a grandmaster. Shit, huh? I did this in the beginning and I realized that that is a huge mistake because yeah, there are some one-liners that work, but you don't have to test them. But if you suddenly come up with a funny story out of nowhere in a normal conversation, people are not prepared for that. And some realize it while you are building the joke up and they go like, oh, fuck, he's the comedian again. So I'm not doing this, but I'm testing all my stuff religiously with Garu. And because we used to meet once a week for coffee and cake and comedy, and anybody else who wanted to come was welcome. And so we would kind of like write each other's material, test each other's material, get other opinions from some other comedians that would come or just people that came by and wanted to, you know, have a chat. So that is very, very important to get an outside angle on what you think was funny. But before that, what's very important to do is when you write comedy, you have to test it on yourself by speaking it out loud, because when it's in your brain, it sounds funny. As soon as you talk, it's maybe not funny at all anymore. And then if you take like a bottle or something, you know, like a microphone and you pace up and down the room, again, it's completely different. That's exercise that you need to do. And so, yeah, I try not to be the funny guy in my private life by boring the hell out of people by telling them my new material that I don't even know that it works, you know. But interesting is sometimes before COVID, when I met people, they would come up to me and they would say stuff from a repertoire. They would come up and say like, 24 Jam, you know. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I like that one, you know. Vegetarians, yeah. So that's good, you know. That's about Hitler. He put the Aryan into vegetarian. Yeah, because he wasn't a vegetarian, and vegetarian are evil people. You ask a chef for that. Okay. Let me give you your 5 cents on my on that one. First of all, if you're not Malaysian, you can't cook Malaysian very well. If you're not German, you can't cook German very well, you know, because you have to grow up as a child with that food to know the taste, okay? And it's in you. You know how a char kway teow or something has to taste. And if I do it, I am not arrogant enough to say like, this is better than the other char kway teow, because it's not. It's my version. And it can only be my version. So I love to cook char kway teow because I love eating it, and some other things. You know, some Indian food is amazing when you go into the chemicals, the flavonoids, and all of that. And you know, a good vindaloo, a pork vindaloo is like. But see, I have a friend who makes the best one. She used to work as a cook for a while with me. She is Indian, from India. And her vindaloo, you know, why do I have to cook it? She does it for me. Actually, 2 days ago, she brought one over to the house. So when you're a cook, stick to your own pot. And if you cook other stuff, be sure it's just a copy. So enjoy the process of cooking. Enjoy cooking, you know. The main ingredient of cooking is love. Okay, put it into your dish, taste it. And if you think it tastes good, then it is good. Okay, you can't make food to please everybody. Everybody has a different background, a different taste, a different opinion, or maybe just having a bad day. And then you throw them out of your restaurant, which I never did, never. So, yeah, I love Malaysian cuisine. I really do. I'm not like an expat or whatever who just says that. It's one of the most amazing cuisine in the world. There's so much different influence from all the sides. And I think Penang is better than KL. Sorry. What would I tell them? You almost never will get rich in art, because art is a business like any other business. You have to know the right people. So don't do it for the money. If you are not really enjoying doing it, don't do it. When you're doing it, try to learn as much as you can. And this learning comes by itself because you're interested in it. I went every day I could to the Whitney Museum or to the MoMA and went on the tours there and listened to the guides, and then had the real piece in front of me. And I tried to figure it out. How are they doing this? Why are they doing this? What's the history behind it? And suddenly art becomes a whole universe. And you see art everywhere because it's in design of your tabletop lamp. It's in food. It's in paintings, in structures, in skyscrapers, in cars, in running shoes. Just embrace it. And don't listen to people, these sourpusses that always say like, oh, you can't do it. Or why are you doing this? This is not good. Don't listen to these people. Okay, listen to yourself, be happy. It takes confidence, yes. But you can also meet a lot of people while doing art. And artists are normally, well, sometimes strange people, but they're not malicious, they're not vicious, they're normally nice and kind people. And you have one thing in common with them, and it will give you a lot of happy hours over cup of coffee or whatever, and do it and enjoy the process. And there's always criticism, always. Doesn't matter. Life's too short. Do it for yourself, enjoy it. That's what I would tell them. You know, we comedians, we don't tell jokes, right? So I have two jokes, and I always got angry when somebody was asking me, you know, in a party or whatever, tell me a joke, okay? And then I realized, Thomas, this just comes with the territory. You can't change it. So if you can't change it, don't get angry, just be prepared. So if I don't like somebody, I have the worst joke in the world, which I can tell you, but not in public. And you will not laugh. And the other one is a joke, which is a joke. It's not mine. It became joke of the year some years ago in a competition. And I like it because it's clever. So there are 3 hunters walking through the Swiss forest. So it's Switzerland, right? Neutral jokes, Switzerland, all of that. So there are 3 hunters walking through the Swiss forest. Suddenly one of them stops breathing, blue in the head, falls over, doesn't move anymore. And the other 2 hunters, they were like, whoa, what happened here? What do we do? So one hunter says like, call up emergency. Okay, so he calls up emergency. And he says, emergency? And said, yeah, how can I help you? We are 3 hunters in the Swiss forest, and we are walking through the forest, and one of us suddenly couldn't breathe anymore, falls down, head is blue, I think he's dead. So the voice on the other end says like, okay, sir, can you make sure? So yeah, just give me a second. And then suddenly you hear this sound. And he goes back to the phone and says like, and now what?